All right, so we've got a stack of stuff here about the legendary Molly Pitcher.
We do.
And honestly, I'm ready for a good mystery.
Oh, you'll get a mystery, all right.
Right.
That image we all know, woman bringing water to soldiers in the thick of battle, it's captivating, but
But like
the
always,
reality's a bit more complicated.
which is why we deep dive. Got a separate fact from folklore, right?
Absolutely.
So let's start with what we think we know. Most sources link Molly Pitcher to this real woman, Mary Ludwig Hays.
Right, Mary Ludwig Hays.
What can you tell us about her life before she becomes this icon?
Well, she was born in 1754, right here in America, but a world away from, well, any halls of power, you know? It was Trenton, New Jersey, and back then, for a girl like Mary, formal education, almost unheard of.
Really?
It's highly likely she never even saw the inside of a schoolhouse.
Wow. Hold on. So this woman who becomes celebrated for what? Bravery on the battlefield?
Right.
Might never have even learned to read or write.
It's true.
That's incredible.
Speaks volumes about her, though, doesn't it? Resilience, adaptability, traits that serve her well later on.
I bet. Okay, so we've got Mary, but Molly was just a common thing back then, right? For Mary.
Oh, yeah, just a nickname makes it a bit more relatable.
Definitely. Though not sure Bob Pitcher would have the same ring to it, huh?
Probably not.
But all right, we've got Molly. How do we get to Molly Pitcher? Was she really dodging bullets with trays of lemonade?
Well, that image, while great for a painting, is likely a later addition.
Ah, okay.
The picture part likely comes from Valley Forge, actually.
Oh, right. Brutal winter, right?
Brutal. And women like Mary were essential.
Not exactly a picnic. From what I've read, those women were running a whole operation behind the lines.
You've got it. Washing, caring for the sick, and critically, hauling water. Especially for those artillery cruise cannons needed constant cooling, sponges to clean the barrels. You can just imagine. Molly Pitcher. Probably became a regular thing, and bam, nickname.
So even before the famous battle, before the legend really takes off,
Right.
she's already proving herself.
Absolutely.
But it's more than just water, isn't it? That nickname, it speaks to something bigger about what women were doing during the war.
You're exactly right. They were the supply line, keeping the Continental Army going. It's a side of the revolution we don't hear enough about. The quiet heroism of women like Mary, ensuring that fight could even happen.
It really makes you think about all those unsung heroes, right? The folks behind the scenes that we don't always hear about.
It really does.
But we can't talk Molly Pitcher without talking about the battle.
Of course not, the Battle of Monmouth.
So set the scene for us.
Yeah.
How does this one day turn Mary Ludwig Hays into a legend?
All right, picture this. June 28th, 1778, sweltering heat.
Oh, I bet.
And the Continental Army is clashing with the British
Whereabouts?
near Monmouth Courthouse, New Jersey.
Yep.
It's chaos, smoke, shouting, cannons are roaring.
Intense.
And Mary is right there, tending to her husband,
Who was?
William Hays, part of the artillery crew.
Okay, so this is where it gets tricky, right? Because we've all heard the story. Mary takes over the cannon, firing back at the enemy. Super dramatic, but how much of that is actually true?
You're right, it's tricky. The details probably get exaggerated over time, happens with a lot of battlefield tales.
Right.
But the main idea, women stepping up when things get crazy, oh, that's not far-fetched at all.
Really?
Not at all. In fact, one of the accounts you sent, Joseph Plum Martin, the soldier,
Yeah, his memoir.
he describes a scene that really tracks with the whole Molly Pitcher legend, even if he doesn't say Mary by name.
You're talking about the cannonball one,
Right.
right? Takes off her petticoat, and she's just like, well, that could have been worse.
That's the one. Now, whether it was Mary Ludwig Hays, can't say for sure.
Right.
But the details, being near the artillery, the timing, it all lines up with what we know about Mary at Monmouth.
Interesting. So it all kind of fits.
It does. But what's really important is this. Martin's story and others, they show us women were on the battlefield doing dangerous things.
So it's not just the water. They're really in it.
They're in it. Loading cannons, tending wounds under fire.
Wow.
It's bigger than one woman, one heroic act. It's about the revolution and women being right there in the thick of it, showing incredible courage.
Totally. So after all that, the dust settles at Monmouth. What happens to Mary? Is she a big hero now?
About those accolades, well, history's funny about giving credit where it's due, especially to women. Mary's life after the war, it's bittersweet. She goes back to Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
With William, they have a son, but then tragedy.
Hold on.
William dies just a few years later.
Oh, no. So she's a widow now, alone with a child. And back then, that was incredibly difficult.
It couldn't have been easy. She did remarry eventually, but that's second marriage. Let's just say it wasn't a happy ending. Second husband wasn't the best, and Mary ends up facing some real hardship.
And this is where those pension records come in, right? They felt kind of, I don't know, formal, but I got the sense they tell an important story.
You hit the nail on the head. These records are amazing because they give us a peek into how people saw Mary's service, but years later.
So not just the heat of the moment, but how it settled.
Exactly. Decades after the revolution, she applies for a pension.
For her service.
For her service and gets it.
Wow, so they really recognize what she did.
They did. This is huge, and for a couple reasons. One, it tells us that Monmouth, her bravery there, it hadn't been forgotten.
People still remembered.
They did. But even bigger, it shows how society was maybe starting to change, even if slowly. They were finally saying, hey, women were vital to American independence, even if it took them a while.
It's amazing, isn't it? Decades later, she gets that recognition. Proof that even back then, women were right there, part of the fight, even if it wasn't always obvious.
Oh, absolutely. Those pension records, they really show us how views change over time. Maybe they weren't leading armies, not in the way we usually picture it.
Right.
But their impact, no question, was massive.
Makes you wonder how many other stories are out there, just like Mary's, waiting for someone to find them. Speaking of which, we've been talking about Molly Pitcher as this one person, but some of what you sent, it made it seem like multiple women might have been called that. What's going on there?
Yeah, that's a whole other layer to this story. Think about it. Battlefields, chaos everywhere, word of mouth, stories, especially good ones about bravery and all that. They change as they spread.
Like a game of telephone almost.
Exactly. So it's very possible that as time went on, Molly Pitcher became less about a single woman and more like a symbol.
Of all the women who are out there defying expectations.
Exactly. They were fighting for a new nation, whether folks were paying attention or not.
So it's not even just about getting the facts straight. It's that sometimes legends, they're bigger than just one person.
I think you've got it. It's a reminder, too, that history isn't just names and dates in a book.
Right. It's people's lives.
Lives, struggles, victories, the whole thing. And sometimes it's about looking beyond the big stories, the famous ones, to find those hidden ones that can change everything.
Which I think brings us to the heart of it. Why does this matter today?
Whoa.
What do we take away from a deep dive like this into Molly Pitcher?
For me, it's a call to action. We got to remember what we think we know about the past. It changes all the time, and we've got a duty to find those untold stories, the voices that got drowned out.
Give them their due.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe by doing that, by letting those unsung heroes finally be heard, maybe that inspires someone today to question things, to fight for what's right, you know?
Write the next chapter of history, and this time, make sure everyone's in it.
That's it. It reminds us that the past isn't really gone. It made us who we are and who we can still become.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. A huge thank you to you, expert speaker, for walking us through all of this. It's been fascinating and honestly, a little inspiring. And to you, dear listener, wherever you are, keep digging, keep asking those questions because you never know what you might find hidden in history.